All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Our guest for today is Miss Michaela Frierson, and I hope I said that correctly. Uh, and we will go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Okay, I'm going to do a little introduction. This is Liz
Oh, okay.
Stockenborg. So thanks, Michaela, for joining us. Excited to hear about what's going on with rescuing wildlife. Um, just a little bit about Michaela. She moved here to Marion County in 2022. She's passionate about humane education, conservation, and values, and she wants to cultivate the love of wildlife and the outdoors with future generations. You guys might know she's been involved in numerous bird and animal rescues in our area. And Rescuing Ocala Wildlife recently purchased a property in South Ocala to build a public wildlife hospital, and they are well on their way. I'm sure we're going to be hearing some more about that as Michaela starts speaking. The goal is to have non-releasable animals to share with the public while continuing their mission of rescue and rehab in Marion County and the surrounding areas. Rescuing Ocala Wildlife relies solely on the support of individual donations and the invaluable contribution of volunteers. So please consider either volunteering or making a donation to help this valuable resource in our community. And I am very pleased to welcome Michaela Frierson. Hi, Michaela.
Hi, Liz. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me again this year. We look forward to all of the Autobahn events every year, and we just love what you guys do. And I'm always so happy to come and talk birds for an afternoon. So like Liz said, my name is Michaela. I'm the president and the founder of Rescuing Ocala Wildlife, or ROW, as you'll hear those of us that have called us frequently, or those of us that frequent using us. I'll just call it ROW. We were established in July of 2022, a bit out of necessity. I moved up here from South Florida and kind of realized there wasn't a lot of wildlife centers, weren't a lot of rescues, rehabbers, anything like that, like there are down south. And so I didn't really have any plans when I moved up here for doing something like this, but one thing led to another, and here we are almost 3 years later. And like Liz said, we've got some really exciting changes that have happened for us just in the last 8-9 months or so, including purchasing a property in South Ocala. It's 10.5 acres, and breaking ground on the construction of our wildlife hospital. So we'll get into that and kind of some other announcements. Today's program is all about a day in the life of a wildlife rehabber, because I know there are a lot of questions. Everybody always says, oh my gosh, you have the coolest job in the world. And I agree, I love what I do, but I think that there is a little bit of misconception from the public about what exactly we're doing all day. So we're going to get into that. Okay, so like I said, we've been here for a few years now, and we don't receive any federal, state, county funding. Don't ask me where your tax dollars are going, but they're not going to us. We pretty much just rely on the good of the community and small businesses and donors to keep us going. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so all donations are tax deductible. And our goal is to bridge that gap that between somebody finding a bird on the side of the road, maybe not even knowing what kind of animal it is, what kind of bird it is, getting it to us for help, and as soon as possible, getting that back out to the wild. So we've just recently launched our new tagline of rescue, recover, and release, because we do really emphasize that release aspect. So the goal is always to get them back out there. Eventually, we would like to have a few permanent non-release animals here for the public to get to know and enjoy. But ultimately, as soon as an animal comes in, we're thinking, how do we get them back out to where they belong? And we are 100% volunteer run, meaning that we don't have any paid staff. Every cent of every donation goes back into our operating expenses, which are everything from vet visits, buying medications, to specialized formula for our babies, and literally keeping the lights on in our brand new hospital. So everything goes back into what we're doing. And pretty much every job is performed by volunteers, whether that's picking up the phone and talking to someone about an animal, or actually receiving the animal, or even going back out into the field and renesting a baby bird, or picking up a snapping turtle or something like that. Transport, rehab, everything is hands-on with our volunteers. So we rescue all birds, turtles and tortoises, non-venomous snakes, and small mammals. This does include rabies vector species, but at this point in time at our new facility, we will not be rehabbing the rabies vectors ourselves. That's a little bit of an update, a little bit of a new thing that we're doing. We do work with rehabbers across 11 counties in Central Florida. So these bats, raccoons, foxes, skunks, all the cute little guys are not going to be left high and dry. We've got places for them to go, but we still will absolutely take them in, especially if it's a critical situation, get them stabilized or help with transport to getting them where they need to go. In May of 2024, around the same time that we broke ground for the new hospital, we rescued our 1,000th animal. That's him up there in the upper right-hand corner. His name was Chuck. He was a baby armadillo. And so we've continued to save hundreds a month since, and we'll talk a little bit about hurricane season later on, but we really had several hundred a month coming in because that was a rough year for all of our wildlife. So we shifted our goal in the last year or so as we started building our facility. Like I said, we've got some of those updates as well as the counties that we serve. We used to cover all of Marion, Citrus, Sumter, and Lake counties. And at this point in time, we are scaling back our reach as far as the counties go. We will still be covering all of Marion County and all of the villages. But if somebody has something outside of those areas, maybe they're in Citrus County, we get a lot up in the, I think it's Volusia County area, where they might find something and there's not a lot of other animals. They are still more than welcome to bring them to us and we will still rehabilitate them. But as far as our volunteer efforts go, we were spending hours and hours and hours a day driving around to transport. And now that we've got the facilities to have more animals in-house, we need to kind of hone our focus in and be spending more time here on property. So here's a few pictures of where we are. This is our new home in South Ocala. For you locals, we're about 2 miles from the Don Gartlett's Drag Museum, just off behind 484. If you've ever driven down 475, there's that little farm stand on the corner. We're right there in that little country area. So it is 10.5 acres. My partner and I live on site in 1 acre. So it's 9.5 acres left over for the wildlife. And this is how it was when we bought it. Just a big empty grass field, lots of stumps, lots of mulberries, lots of snakes. And we are trying to leave as much of that intact as possible, being who we are. We're trying to work with the wildlife, leave the trees, just clear what we need to kind of expand. But here's what it started to look like about a month after we bought it. So we closed on the property in June. This was in August. So we started the prep work. We put down a concrete pad for our hospital. It is 2,200 square feet, 2,000 inside, and then the little front porch area that you see there. And then we bought our building. So we bought a metal building. They come and they assemble it all for us. So that was pretty cool. Saved us a lot of the work. It is divided into thirds. You can kind of see in that picture on the right. That's if I stood, well, if I did stand, it doesn't look like that anymore. But if I stood in the back and looked forward, you would see the area to the left, to the area to the right. Those are smaller areas. Each one is about 500 square feet. So we're going to have it divided into mammals in that area you see to the left there, birds and reptiles together in the area to the right. The center area now has some lofts, and then we will also have a quarantine area. In the middle will primarily be used for food prep, laundry folding, everything that we don't really need to be doing in front of the animals. We can kind of go behind closed doors, keep it a little bit more low stress. So these were the pictures I showed to the Brownwood birders just a couple of months ago of us putting up the walls. We've also got a public restroom in there that you can see framed out in the second photo. So we were putting up the walls. We built the lofts. One loft will be an office space. The other one will be for storage. We do also have plans to have some in-house diagnostic capabilities, including blood slides, fecals, urinalysis, everything like that. So we'll also have lab equipment up there. And then this was actually just this past weekend. We got the spray foam put into the ceiling. It is keeping it so much cooler in there, and we're not even in the heat of summer yet. So I'm very grateful to have this going now. And a quick picture of our new public restroom also underway. And then this was a few weeks ago. We started painting. This is what we're calling the mammal side. While we are still under construction and we need some place for the birds and reptiles to go right away, we will just be having everybody in here for now, for space sake. But you can see our washer dryer, everything in the back is all hooked up. We built the countertops and got our caging up, and there are many, many more cages in there now. These pictures are about a week old, but so it's starting to take shape, starting to look more like a hospital. We will be operational by the end of the month for sure, whether that means, like I said, kind of combining the birds, reptiles, mammals all together in this one room for now, or possibly moving a little bit quicker on the other side. But we will be ready to take in the injured, orphaned, and sick wildlife around Marion County that need our help. So a little bit, like I said, about the vision, we're expanding our capabilities and the types of animals that we rehab. We would like to offer some on-site educational opportunities, whether that means people coming and doing a birding walk like we just talked about, or maybe having some school field trips, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, everything like that. We would love to house some non-releasable wildlife for the purpose of education. Over there on the right, that picture is Mango. She's one of our current education ambassadors. She's a Florida box turtle, and she was attacked by a dog last year. She lost her leg and was deemed non-releasable. So we've got animals like Mango that come out with us and talk to everybody about what we've got going on, talk to them about human-wildlife conflicts, which we'll get into as well. So definitely just keep an eye on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We've got a newsletter you can sign up for. And then we kind of just give everybody the scoop on what's going on. We've changed our business hours. We're now 9 to 4 for the public, no longer 8 to 8. But we will still field calls from across the state, even though we've honed in our areas. So to get into our topic of the evening, a little bit about the day in the life of a wildlife rehabber. I know the boxes are cutting into this a little bit here. Put this down here, so we can see. So wildlife rehabbers are a jack of all trades. They're everything from their financial planners to physical therapists, advocates, researchers, carpenters, bus drivers, x-ray technicians, event planners, pharmacy technicians, phlebotomists, you name it, and we are doing it. A lot of the time in the larger veterinary offices, you have, vet techs, you have your vets, you have your receptionists. And then if you think about that even in a broader sense of if you go to a human hospital, you have one person that takes your x-ray, one person that comes and draws your blood, one person that goes and fills your medications. And we are lumping all of that together in a job description for one person. A lot of rehabbers are also working out of their homes, or they run their own nonprofits. So they end up doing all of their grant applications, taking their own pictures, putting up their own websites, doing programs like this. So we really are keeping busy every day. No 2 days are the same. We every single day are doing something different. So if that sounds like something you would like to do, come and volunteer with us. So a lot of wildlife rehabbers do come from veterinary medicine backgrounds, like maybe they're vets or retired vets, or maybe they worked in shelter work, animal services, anything like that. But because we are volunteer-based, we get people from all over the place. We get a lot of human medical workers. We get our nurses, people that are educating in their other roles like park rangers. And we get a lot of veterans and first responders as well, just because of the nature of the field rescue that we have going on. There's no real degree for wildlife rehabilitation as a standalone. There are a lot of adjacent degrees, but nobody's really out there going to school for this just yet. I won't be surprised if in the next 10 years or so that changes. But pretty much everything that we learn is on the job through volunteering, interning, just coming and spending a day with us. And then you just kind of build your craft from there. Most rehabbers are not paid for their work. And when they are paid, it is low salaries. So we're not in this for the money. We are dedicating our life to wildlife conservation and education because we love it. So a little bit about a typical day, which again, there's no such thing. We generally will start taking care of the animals around 8 o'clock. It might be a little bit earlier for the babies that we have eating pretty much 24 hours a day. But about 8 to 10 a.m., we'll start our morning feedings for the infants and the critical adults. Those are maybe the patients that can't eat solid food or are on liquid diets. Then about 9 o'clock, we have changed our business hours. So the phones start ringing. This was completely by design. So we now have an hour before and a couple hours after our phones ringing, but people will still call 24 hours a day. We come in the morning and there are calls from 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. and midnight. So we review all of the calls and texts and Facebook messages and answer them in order of urgency. Around 8 to 10, we're going to be doing our morning medications all around, followed by cleaning cages. And then I have on here that the second infant feeding would be around noon, but that's not entirely correct because we often have babies like the very young squirrels eating every 2 hours. And even some types of songbirds like the Carolina wrens eat every 20 minutes. So this is just kind of a loose structured day for us. We meal prep for the afternoon feedings, give out the afternoon medications, and then feed out. Then it's time to feed the orphans again. And then our phone does turn off at 4 o'clock now, which leaves us a few hours in the evening to meal prep, give out the evening medications, clean up the cages a bit, and then feed the babies again. And a lot of the time for these little tiny babies, the possums and the squirrels, they are eating all day and all night. So that doesn't necessarily mean that our day is over at 8 o'clock or that our day starts at 8 o'clock. So what's not included in that typical day, quote unquote, is restocking supplies, inventories, things like dishes, laundry, housekeeping, like disinfecting, buying and ordering what we need. The phone rings nonstop. I keep saying that we need someone to just come and answer our phones all day, every day, because that really takes us away from the things that we're trying to do the most. We do take a lot of notes here. We have intake forms on all of our animals, and we have digital charts for every single animal, which if you've got one cage with just 20 squirrels in it, that can add up to be a real time-consuming task. All the transport from each rehab to the vet, maybe we're transferring animals out, everything like that. Our education animals like our box turtles and our corn snake need to be handled daily. They also need some enrichment. Those in-house diagnostics that I mentioned that we're hoping to be able to do a little bit more this year, also time consuming. The overnight feedings, new intakes, there's no telling how many animals we'll get in a day. Sometimes we only take in one animal, and when it's off season in December and January, there are days my phone won't ring at all and I end up checking it to make sure it's working. And then there are days like after those hurricanes where we were getting 200+ calls a day. And every time a new animal comes in, that's a triage and an initial exam. We've got to set up a cage based on their injuries, the age, and their needs, medicate them as appropriate, feed them as they might be needing, train these volunteers so that we do have enough hands on deck to do what we need to do, fundraise and write grants to keep the lights on, apply for our permits with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, create all of our social media content, schedule and attend outreach like this. We do a lot of continuing education ourselves, whether it's online courses or in-person conferences, construction projects. We've got several going on right now, like building the cages outside, setting up cages in the office. Releases, a lot of the time, are very time consuming too, because we do try to release back the birds and the reptiles pretty close to where they came from. So a lot of the time that means driving a good distance. And then not included in any of that is taking a lunch break, sleeping in, paid time off. We don't have any of that. So according to the IWRC, only a third of a rehabber's time is actually spent on animal care. So as much as we love these little critters that we have devoted all of our time and our lives to, only about 35% of that is actually handling the animals. And it's a lot of admin tasks, managing, working with the public. So most facilities don't have the time because of all of the that we've talked about. They simply don't have the time and the manpower to send people out an hour and a half away to go and pick something up. But at the same time, a lot of people don't know how to safely and humanely capture wildlife. Maybe they're afraid of it. Maybe they don't have a car, or they're working that night, or they're on their way to work, or they're on their way out of town. There's all these extenuating circumstances that come into play all the time. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 that we have to just navigate as best we can. So with the animals that come into rehab, every animal faces one of 4 outcomes. They are either released, or their injuries are so severe that they end up remaining in captivity for their life. Maybe again, their injuries are even more extensive than that, and they end up dying in care, or they require a humane euthanasia. Most rehab facilities have a release rate of 45 to 50%. And I know that that sounds really low, but we are dealing with some animals that are as bad off as possible. We get things that are burned, that are shot, that are hit by cars, that have been grabbed by a dog and shaken. I mean, just really all sorts of different injuries that, you know, no two cases are the same, even when it comes to gunshots or hit by cars. So pretty much everything that comes into us is a result of a human wildlife conflict, whether that's being hit by a car or a tree cut down and a nest full of babies falls down and mom never comes back. I personally include cat attacks in the category of human wildlife conflicts, because if it wasn't for us throwing our cats outside, we wouldn't have any of these cat attacks. We also get things like animals that are tangled in fishing line and hooks. That bottom right picture there is a raccoon that I had a few years ago that had a peanut butter jar stuck on his head. And that was really fun to try to get off of him because he was big and healthy and mad. We get a lot of secondhand poisonings resulting from rodenticides, herbicides. We get birds and snakes caught in glue traps. I've got a glue trap picture up there on the top right. But again, pretty much all of this is avoidable, and that comes back to our main mission of education. A lot of people don't know what they're doing when they take that glue trap and put it outside in their front yard instead of indoor use, or they don't think about cutting apart their jars, which is something I personally wouldn't have probably thought too much about if I didn't start seeing things like this. So we try to connect with people a lot and get that connection in the community, because people care about what they can connect with. So if we have the time to show somebody a tortoise or a possum and explain to them how actions have this kind of chain reaction, then a lot of the time we're more likely to have people come back and care. So 2024 hurricane season, based on what you believe, I think we could also call our changing seasons a little bit of a human cause. But between Helene and Milton, we received 2.5 times as many babies per month as we did in 2022 and 2023. And that was primarily gray squirrels and flying squirrels. That picture on the top right there was the day after, oh gosh, I don't even remember which storm now. One of those storms. We didn't have power at our house, so I had an incubator plugged into the generator and was just throwing all of the babies in together. The really nice thing about babies is they're kind of like baby humans, where everybody's their friend and they all get along. So that's seven baby gray squirrels are the little pink things. No, they don't even look like squirrels. A lot of them are very bruised. You can see that kind of purple discoloration. A couple of them have little puncture marks that were already caught by cats. The flying squirrels were mainly all right. They had a lot of pneumonia and a lot of sneezing and a lot of water-related illnesses. And then that is a dove, not a baby, but she flew into a window or was possibly blown into it from the hurricane winds. Top left picture, there's a little mole somebody pulled out of their pool. He was all right. He did come in for treatment for an upper respiratory infection from essentially drowning in the water, but he lived and was released. And then that bottom picture there is a possum that was affected. He wedged himself into a gutter and didn't come out too long after the storm. He got pretty anemic. You can see how white he is there. His little nose is very pale. So we also normally don't see flying squirrels until November or December every year. And these were a lot of flying squirrels very early, and they were very young, which means that they actually started breeding early last year as well. This past hurricane, I did not get any shorebirds that were blown off course, but in prior years, I had a tern, a laughing gull, and a friend of ours in Citrus County got a shearwater. So all just birds that don't really belong here, just being blown in. And we get a lot of cold, emaciated, parasite-filled adults like that possum, where they've just hunkered down and done their best to survive the storm. And while they survive the storm, they have a hard time coming back from it. So that's another one of these kind of obstacles that we are always trying to overcome as wildlife rehabbers, is preparing the best we can. But man, that fallout can be pretty intense. And then these are just a few cases I wanted to share with you guys from 2024, a little bit of 2023 and 2024 primarily. This was a loon, very cool to get to see her. I've only had 3 loons come in the last 3 years. So we do get several of them when they're migrating down. They mistake the blacktop of the highways. This one was actually in the Chewy parking lot up off of where the warehouse is in North Ocala. So she was flying over and mistook the parking lot with the lights on it as an icy lake and crashed down, but she was okay. I took her to our vet. She got an exam and she got x-rays. And ultimately it was decided that the best thing for her was to get back out there as soon as possible so she could continue her winter season season here and migrating further if she so chose. So that picture is of her released just shortly after that, actually on Lake Weir, because that was the closest large enough body of water that we could find. This is Ruby. We anticipated that Ruby would be a permanent possum with us, an education ambassador. Unfortunately, she did pass, but this is a long rehab, another human-wildlife conflict. She was hit by a golf cart in the Villages. And just because of that, like I said, the missing link between education and people wanting to help, they actually started hosing her down with water while she was on the golf course because they thought maybe she was overheated. So she came in with extreme head trauma, very severe road rash. Her jaw was broken, and then she was hypothermic on top of that. But possums are incredibly resilient. They're one of my favorite animals to work with because of that. So she also had an abscess in her pouch, which is why that second I guess the middle picture on the top row is her in her little outfit, keeping her abscess clean in her pouch. Because of the severity of Ruby's head trauma, she was not able to eat on her own for several weeks. So the top picture all the way on the right is Christmas morning, sitting there tube feeding Ruby, or sorry, not tube feeding, syringe feeding. And then she started to eat on her own. She got a lot better. She was in care for total almost 6 months. And because we don't always know what's going on in these animals, we can get x-rays, but we don't have the comprehensive studies and the imaging of diagnostics with CTs or MRIs. She ultimately ended up having seizures and passing away. But it was one of those stories where she lived with us for a really long time. She got to touch the hearts of a lot of people because we were sharing her stories over social media and everything. And I like to think that at least the people that found Ruby learned something that day about what to do if they find an animal, and hopefully some of those villagers and their golf carts even started paying attention after that. This is a great horned owl that was in a glue trap. This is in the Villages as well. This was last November, I believe. And again, this is that typical, people just don't really know that they're not supposed to do things like this. He was hunkered down in a magnolia bush, I think. I'm not good at plants. Somebody that knows plants better might know what those leaves are. But he was hunkered down in there, and because he was still so sticky, the leaves stuck to him, my gloves stuck to him, the towels, I mean, just everything. So we took him right away after we picked him up to our vet where he was sedated and given a really good bath. So that's that picture there where he kind of looks like he's having a nice spa day. He's fully sedate, he's asleep. And he is just getting all the glue off. Sometimes this takes several baths and several attempts, but he did fully recover. That's him all the way on the right, getting ready to go, a completely different looking bird. And overall, he was only in care about 2 days. Oh, I saw the chat. I will come back to you in just a second. This was Gasket. He was an adult male possum that was trapped by a trapper that we work with. They're pretty much the only trapping company that we recommend because they are very humane. And whenever they get cases like this, they call us. So she took this picture up at the top left and sent me a text saying she didn't know what it was and she couldn't get it off. She brought him into me and he was sedated. And it took all of those tools there in the top right photo to try to get this thing off. I started with scissors, then I tried a scalpel, and I ended up getting these like shears. I don't even know what to call them. Really heavy duty clippers to try to get this thing off of his neck. And you can see when I got that off, it was just full of dirt. It had maggots in it. The smell was unimaginable. And then his neck on the bottom left there, it was actually growing into his skin. So I think that this is probably something that he stuck his head through. I still don't know what it is, but I think it's something he stuck his head through to get something to eat when he was a little baby. He was about a year old, I would guess, by the time he came in. So that had just been growing with him for who knows how long. But he just got some wound care. He wore that really cute pink star vet wrap collar for a few days. And less than 2 weeks later, the skin was closed over and he was ready to go back out. This was a couple Christmases ago now, but this was actually, it was January after everybody was taking their Christmas lights down, and somebody was outside taking down lights and noticed that on their neighbor's house, there was this red tail dangling by the lights. And just as fate would have it, I was a couple of blocks from them when they called, and I turned around and went right over there and cut him out of the lights. The lights were fully wrapped around his foot. You can see in the middle picture, it's a little bit swollen. It's just a little bloody. It was not broken. It just needed a little bit of cleanup and a few days in care just so that that swelling could go back down and he could get full use of his feet, because of course their feet are the most important thing for these hawks that rely on them for hunting. And I apologize for the background noise. That is my cat playing in the cabinets. This is Grasshopper. She was one of the baby possums from this past baby season. She came in and was a cat attack. That picture on the left was her intake picture, and why we started calling her Grasshopper, because she had these little hitchhikers just stuck all over her, and she was just the cutest thing. We knew she was attacked by a cat, so we started her on antibiotics like we do with all wildlife that has been in contact with a cat or a dog. But within 24 hours, that middle picture there, her face just started to swell up completely. She looked like a completely different possum. If I hadn't seen her in the first place, I would have guessed maybe she got bit by a snake or stung by a bee or something really crazy that would have that inflammatory effect. The picture on the right, you can kind of see too, her head is like a triangle. But she ended up going on a course of antihistamines and steroids and coming right back to normal. And she was released back out in the wild as well. And then we had 3 of these last year. I had not heard of bird netting, but it's some kind of garden netting that people put over their fruit trees. I got a call for the black racer that was stuck in it, and I went out there. And then when I was walking around the tree, just taking a look at things, I saw actually a second one. So those are 2 different snakes there in those pictures. They had been caught up in that string and fighting it, and you can see it's literally almost cutting him in half. And it was so bad, I ended up just sitting down on her grass there and just picking at it for, I don't even know how long, but we ended up freeing them. They came back into care with me just for about 2 days. They weren't cut up too bad, shockingly. They bounced right back. We rehydrated them, just did a little bit of antiseptic cleanse on their abrasions, and they were ready to go. And if you have ever come in contact with a black racer, you know just how feisty and bitey they are. So they were very enthusiastic to let me know that they were ready to leave. They thanked me with a couple of bites on their way out. So it is now what we call baby season. It started early this year. Sometimes we don't get into baby season until April or May. It never really stopped this year. We had such a warm winter in the beginning there that we were still getting baby squirrels in December and January. But now is when we'll really be in the full swing of things. The rabbits have started, the possums and squirrels. The birds have a few more weeks, but the raptors, I should say the songbirds have a few more weeks, but the raptors have definitely started. We just got our call for our first baby great horn of the season a few days ago. So while you're out in the world, you're very likely to come in contact with one of these animals, or you see a Facebook post or your neighbor calls about it. So how to tell if they're in crisis. With the babies, the biggest thing is if they feel cold to the touch. The babies aren't able to thermoregulate their own temperatures, so they feeling cold is really a big red flag for them. If they have ants or maggots, sometimes those maggots look like little grains of rice, kind of like a off-white yellowish. And that can be what we call fly strike. That's the larval stage of those maggots on usually their skin. They can be on their bottoms, they can be on their faces, or other bugs. Even just a lot of fleas is enough to make a baby very anemic and cause for them to come into care. Any obviously broken bones, whether that's a dangling leg, when you pick them up, it looks like it's just flopping around. Asymmetrical wings, when you look at a bird, is very clear indicative of a shoulder fracture or a collarbone, a bird version of a collarbone, a coracoid. If they vocalize for hours on end, and I say hours with a little bit of emphasis, just because it is normal for babies to cry. There might be a nest of squirrels up in a tree crying, and then you turn around 5 minutes later and they've stopped and you don't hear it again. Just like human babies, they're just crying for their moms. But if you hear it nonstop for hours at a time, chances are that baby's getting very hungry, very cold, and doesn't know where their mom is. There's no such thing as being played with by a cat or a dog. So if they are picked up and brought in as a gift, people like to say, or, thinking that it was their baby, chances are that cat or dog has punctured them, especially cats. Their teeth are so sharp. It's very hard to actually find the puncture where they've bitten them, but they do carry that bacteria in their mouth that is very deadly to wildlife, sometimes even with an antibiotic. So they need to come into care. Bleeding or any visible punctures, again, visible punctures probably not from a cat, but maybe a dog or even a bird of prey. If their eyes are glazed over or if their head is droopy, of course, laying near a dead adult, chances are that's their parent and they need immediate help. And then the last two, if they're unable to lift their head or if they're having difficulty walking or standing, do depend on the species and the age. We know a lot of these water birds, like the herons, they don't really like to lift their heads because they've got these giant disproportionate noggins. So they really won't be picking up their heads too much. And if they're having difficulty walking or standing, there's a good chance that they're just too young to have a really normal gait. We see that especially with the fawns. They're very wobbly on their feet. But anytime you find any baby animal, get them warm and dry, put them in a cardboard box, a shoebox, cat carrier, anything like that. Line it with a t-shirt or a fleece blanket. We don't use a lot of towels when we're containing animals just because their claws can catch on the loops of the towel. But throw in a t-shirt or a fleecy and close up that box, keep it away from pets and other people. And if you can get that baby warm, that's even better. Put a heating pad on low underneath that box, but just do not give any food or water. If that is your one takeaway from tonight, do not give any food or water. And you can comment that on every Facebook post you see of somebody finding an animal. So this is for the adults that you may see and not be able to tell if they're in trouble. So if they let you walk right up to them and approach, there are certain cases where you might be able to get a little bit closer than others. We see that especially in the red tails when they're enjoying a meal, they will just let people walk right up to them before they fly away. But for the most part, if you walk right up to them and they're showing that fear and they fly off, that animal's probably fine. Feeling cold to the touch. Again, this is kind of within reason. If you find a snake or a turtle, they're probably going to be cold regardless of their health. But for mammals and birds, they shouldn't feel ice cold any colder than your body is. And then there's ants and maggots and other bugs. Pretty much everything is the same down to the drooling. We see a lot if they have encountered one of those rodenticides, herbicides, eating something that they really shouldn't. Open mouth breathing. There are still some parameters around that. Like a lot of the hawks will open their mouth and make that kind of shocked face at you. They're not open mouth breathing. They're just trying to be really extra scary. And spinning in circles is a clear sign of head trauma. We see that a lot with animals that don't have any obvious injuries. They're not bloody, they don't have a broken bone. We wouldn't have any real reason to suspect that they were maybe hit by a car besides that head trauma. And then a lot of the time when we look deeper, we see something like maybe something's going on with the eyes or the ears, or they've got something else going on. Same thing goes if you're able to contain it, fantastic. I am not an advocate for telling anybody to run up and grab a raccoon and put it in a box. But if you have something little and cute, like the flying squirrels, or even some of the birds of prey when they're out of it, that is a barred owl with some head trauma, they'll let you just scoop them up and put them in a box. And same thing goes, quiet, dark place, line the box with something so they're not sliding around, no food, no water, and contact your nearest licensed rehabber. So we take on a lot, and one thing we get is how to help us. We always appreciate anybody spreading the word, whether that's your preferred social media, just telling your neighbors, maybe putting a post on your next door, or if you know who runs your local neighborhood, like newsletter or newspaper. Donations are helpful no matter what they are. We always need supplies donated. We keep our Amazon wish list very up to date, and that's by time of year as well. I actually just went on and added on a bunch of things that we need for the hospital, as well as a bunch of things that we need for these babies that are starting to come in. So there's some formulas and things on there too. Monetary donations, of course, are always welcome. We have Zelle, PayPal, Cash App, check that you can make a credit card donation on our website. The link is down there at the bottom. It's rowildlife.org. You can also watch our social media posts. Sometimes we'll put something out like we're looking for a new washer dryer and somebody donated their old one. So there are certain things that we ask for that maybe somebody else has one or you're looking to get rid of something. We love coming out to community events. We love doing public outreach. If you've got an affiliation that is hosting an event and would like us to come out and have a booth, we would love to be there. We actually now do have the brick buying for our new hospital. You can find that on our website as well. There's a little drop down that says buy a brick, and you can buy one. They're going to be paving the path from our parking area back to the hospital. We have some sponsorship opportunities that you can also find on our website. We've got different giving levels that talk about what your $5 a month gift can do, all the way up to $500 a month. And each one of those comes with a little incentive, like you might get a free hat with it, or you might get access to our newsletter, backpacks, all sorts of things. And we always need volunteers. So on-site volunteers, we have that application up on our website now. We anticipate actually taking volunteers in person at the end of the month. And that will be for things like animal care, cleaning the cages, feeding, laundry, dishes, all of those just daily tasks. There is no experience required. We're happy to teach everybody everything they need to know. And we always need offsite volunteers as well. And that can be just transporting animals from the finder to us or from us to another wildlife center. And I'm sorry, there go my dogs. And we also do group project days. We've got scout projects. Community service hours are always available since we are a nonprofit. Our minimum age to volunteer is 18, but we hope to maybe soon be able to open that up to all ages as well. And like I said, answering the phones could be its own job. We deal with a lot of people that are panicking. They find an animal and they don't know what to do with it. They've maybe just been through a trauma, even seeing that animal get hit by a car or, seeing the tree come down, what have you. So we get a lot of panicked callers, and it's our job to just kind of be that calm voice on the other end of the phone, giving them advice and just trying to get them to do what's best for that animal and keep themselves safe as well. And we dispel a lot of misinformation through this education. A lot of the things that you hear, like if you touch a baby animal, the mom won't come back for it. Or, something that they saw online about feeding an animal is okay as long as you use this kind of milk or anything like that. We can't be everywhere at once. So we do ask a lot of the times that the finders step in. We'll walk them through how to do everything. That in itself can be a little bit tricky with people, having to get them to overcome whatever initial fear they have of picking up a wild animal, which is completely understandable, but our job as well to help them overcome and do it safely. And we also have to break a lot of news to people and make sure that the public understands. If we take in an animal from someone and it's just something that absolutely cannot be saved, or even just through care for a little while isn't showing signs of being able to be released, a lot of the times that may be a euthanasia. And there's a lot of public misconception with that, where they think if they bring something to us, it's just going to be euthanized, or that we didn't try, or that we don't care. So we spend a lot of time trying to overcome those things as well. These are some references for wildlife in distress, and our website is on there. Oh my gosh, my dogs. I am so sorry. The other one that we recommend is AHNow, animalhelpnow.org. All of these on here will take birds. Some of them will take all wildlife. And then the FWC Ocala Regional Office is on there as well. AHNow is really great to either download their app or pin the page on your phone, because they cover the entire country. So even if you're out of state, you can look up where to take an animal that needs help. All right. And I apologize again for my dogs, but I will take you guys' questions. Saw there was one in the chat. Oh, perfect. It was a magnolia. That makes me happy. All right. If anybody has any questions, comments, we can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Oh, thank you, Paula.
Yes, I can unmute you guys. Might as well.
Thanks, Michaela. That was awesome. We'll see if anybody has any questions. I think we've got few enough people. We can unmute people in case anybody has, we can actually talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just like a herd of elephants running through my house, but you guys will just have to ignore that.
That's okay. I had myself muted so you didn't hear my cat and my dog.
Yeah, we've got two very big dogs out here getting out their zoomies at the perfect time, of course. But yeah, do you guys have any questions about the animals we deal with, what we kind of do, our mission?
I have a question, Michaela. I have a hermit thrush and its leg is dangling. It's flying though. So is there any way that anything can be done for it, or do we just leave it and let nature take its course as long as it's moving around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So with especially the flighted birds, we of course have a really hard time catching them if they're not debilitated to a point where they're, laying on the ground or in one spot where we can just walk up and get them. A lot of the time they will evade us for as long as possible. With birds, the fractures can start to heal within 24 hours. And of course, if that isn't done correctly, that fracture is going to start healing wrong. And
Right.
not all fractures are created equal. So it might be something that the bird can start to heal and within, based on species and age, but it's generally about 4 to 6 weeks. That bird can have a leg that it's able to hop on or, at least be weight bearing. Sometimes if it's completely snapped, like up at the top, it may never get mobility back in that. But based on the type of bird too, we would want to consider, is that something that that bird can survive with? If it's something that can go and still land on a feeder or a ground forage, that's perfect. If it was one of our raptors where they really need both feet and both legs to be able to come down and, get their food, then that's something that they're not going to really be able to survive with and might be worth pursuing, even if it's just for a humane euthanasia, so that bird's not out there starving.
Right. No, it seems, I mean, it's flying. It's not a feed, it doesn't come to the feeders, but it appears to be, I've seen it for about a week now. The leg seems to be bothering it, but it continues to seem to be healthy and flying. So I'll just keep monitoring it. And if it can't fly anymore, if I can find it, then I'll give you a call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In cases like that, a lot of the time we opt to just leave them out, especially if it has been like a week where, even if we were to bring that animal in, maybe there's nothing we could do even surgically to correct that fracture. And then is at the end of the day, we might still be looking at the same outcome.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thanks for what you're doing. Thank you for this talk. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Paula, I see yours. You had the Anhinga with the fishing line on her beak, but she was able to fly. So Anhingas and cormorants are probably the hardest birds that we have to work with. They are so flighty. No pun intended, but flighty by nature, where, they don't let us get really close to them. Even the ones that are at fishing piers or things like that, where they've been a little bit more humanized, they don't appreciate us walking up to them or trying to, God forbid, throw a net over them. So a lot of the time with that, what we'll do is just have to have everybody keep an eye on it for a few days. A lot of the time they'll start rubbing their beak and be able to break it off, at least to where they're able to use their lower jaw, even if it's still stuck on the top, so they can eat or drink. Or sometimes, like we've had a few times down there in the villages where they've maybe been caught up for so long, they are starting to get a little bit weaker, a little bit more hungry and thirsty. And then we are able to go up and get them. But usually by that point, it's been at least 7 days. So it is kind of one of those things where you just have to really keep an eye on it. There are a few rehabbers in the state that use net guns where they can stand on the shore and fire a net and be able to go and get the bird. We don't use them ourselves. They're a little bit costly, and they're also something that takes a lot of practice using. And realistically, we don't get that many birds, thankfully, that would require something like that. But again, that's not to say that just because we can't do it, we couldn't refer you to somebody else, or, at least send them the pictures or give them a call and see if they think it's worth coming out for. Anybody else?